Massive structures discovered under the Great Pyramid that could change everything. What the? Rightio, punters. I think we'd better check this one out.
How did they find out what's underneath the pyramids? So I've read everything that is available from the Scotsman and the Italian who have come up with this press conference with this big announcement. They're yet to publish their paper. I think it comes out maybe early this week. So let's read it when it does come out. So the one thing that I can add to the story is my past research into synthetic aperture radar and imaging systems. They claim that they've used SAR, synthetic aperture radar, from a satellite asset to penetrate the Earth by over 2,000 feet. Well, that's not how synthetic aperture radar works. It might be a very vague byproduct. SAR is brilliant, and there is a commercial system as well as, of course, the military system, so it's possible that they did have access to it. And it lets you see through rain and cloud and fog and at night, and it will also take away tree cover to give you very, very accurate measurements of altitude. That's how it works. If you take 3 synthetic aperture radars and shine it down onto the surface of the Earth, it will penetrate weather, foliage, and work at night, of course, and give you a very accurate measurement of anything that is above the ground. For example, the military can use it to see if the oleo struts on an aeroplane have lowered due to there being a bomb on board the plane. So it's very, very accurate. But it doesn't really penetrate the Earth. It's bouncing off the surface of the Earth. There is kind of evidence that you can use SAR for mineral research. It's very sensitive to certain magnetic resonances from metals. The story goes that if you have something of a known atomic mass, such as a belt buckle from the US, you can find US service people on a battleground by dialing in the exact atomic mass of their belt buckle, so finding the trousers, so finding the person inside the trousers. That's what I hear. And also the story that Ayatollah Khamenei was given a very specific gravity ring, which you can look for anywhere in Iran. That's a bit of a tall order. But definitely a government agency such as the NRO can use satellite radar to measure things like car production in Korea. You can measure the specific gravity of a battery or a part of a car, and you can count how many are coming out of the factory. So economic spying by SAR. But it doesn't really penetrate the Earth. The one system that does penetrate the ground that you have seen on British television on Time Team, a TV program I used to work on, use ground penetrating radar. It's like a lawnmower that you push over the ground, and it will go through soil or sand in Egypt by about 5 to 10 feet. Possibly there's military grade ground penetrating radar that can go deeper, but certainly not down to 2,000 feet. The only way I know to get details deep under the ground, thousands of feet, is to use a seismic system. What you can do is set off a charge, poof, in a borehole surrounded by seismographs, and the speed of the shock wave propagating from the explosion reaching the seismographs, you can join them all together and make some kind of vague picture of the underlying strata. You use it for oil exploration. It's a well-known system. But that brings me on to another point. Another program I've worked on in my history of television, there's a lot of films about Egypt, and the director of antiquities in Egypt is notoriously not very open to wacky theories, and certainly not open to doing seismographic explosions underneath his pyramids. It's just not going to happen. All the more outlandish programs on Egypt use generic stock shots. You just don't get permission to do aliens in Egypt story. They find it very disrespectful to their ancestors, which I kind of agree. Although they're interesting ideas, you just don't get permission from Cairo to go and do those programs. So I can't imagine how they actually did the survey under the pyramids of Giza, which are very, very special to Egyptians, of course. So what are these researchers saying about how they imaged this amazing find? You know, giant pillars with coily ropes and 2,000 feet and then chambers and then so. I mean, it's great. I love it. But how did they do it? Well, they are very vague They cite synthetic aperture radar, which really doesn't look underground. Okay, they're not talking about doing the kind of seismic blast and seismographs in a circle around the pyramids. They wouldn't get permission to do that anyway. But what they are saying is that they've got access to some kind of system that I don't even know exists on board some satellite they don't name that has an exotic kind of sensor. Why would they have access to it? That can measure the vibrations of the Earth, that can form a picture deep inside the Earth. Well, I don't think these two researchers have their own satellite program, and if it is on a satellite, tell us which satellite and what is the system that they're using. And I don't fully understand the vibration theory and to the level of visual detail that they're publishing. So
Buonasera e benvenuti sul canale Expedition.
Good evening and welcome to the Expedition channel, the official channel of the Kefren project. This is an announcement in my role as Head of Communications for the research project conference, held both in person and online, to reveal the results of an innovative and groundbreaking study that has redefined the boundaries of satellite data analysis and archaeological exploration. During the press conference, for the first time ever, structures believed to correspond to the legendary halls of Amenti will be revealed. Using synthetic aperture radar (SAR) technology, combined with the new Doppler tomography methodology, the research team has made a series of unprecedented discoveries, located precisely beneath the Giza Plateau. This technological innovation involves converting photonic radar information into phononic signals, vibrational data within the acoustic band, thus enabling the exploration of deeply buried structures beneath the Earth's surface.
Okay, so that is a little snippet from the press conference of them announcing this kind of technology that this team has used that has found these kilometers deep megastructures. I mean, we are talking immense. The size of one of these pillars is higher than the Empire State Building, and apparently there's 8 of them underneath the Pyramid of Khafre at Giza. So, for a little bit of context, why is my PowerPoint going nuts? The method that this is based off of is a method that is used in archaeology and in other kinds of remote sensing to understand land use, environmental data sets, urban data sets even in the modern world. It is called synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography, and it has been in use since the 1980s. So it is not exactly a new sort of technology in that sense. However, this team, Filippo Biondi and Corrado Malanga, Malanga is actually a chemist. He has nothing to do with this technology or an archaeology at all. And Filippo Biondi is actually someone who has experience doing remote sensing. They published in peer-reviewed in 2022 a look at the Great Pyramid. So that's different from what we're about to talk about. But to them, it was to show a few new voids within the Great Pyramid. Voids which, by the way, have not been confirmed since this 2022 paper has been published. And I think that that matters for a second. But we'll get back to that in a second because that's one of the issues with this method and these claims. This is the data that they presented last week that they released for journalists and stuff like this. This is what the actual data looks like when you use this SAR method to scan, in a sense, remotely using satellite data, the area underneath the middle pyramid at Giza. So this is what we are assessing, what this kind of data means, these kind of red, green, bluish blobs on the screen.
This week, you might have heard about the Khafre project, SAR pyramid scanning results. A team of scientists from Italy have been using satellite scans, and they claim that they have evidence of underground structures and tunnel networks that are underneath the middle pyramid on the Giza plateau, including 5 never-before-found chambers inside the pyramid at ground level that replicate exactly the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid, 8 hollow cylindrical structures, descending down into the earth for over 400 meters. And not only that, these 4 hollow cylindrical structures connect to 2 square 80 meter by 80 meter chambers. And underneath that, they say that there is 2 kilometers of interconnecting tunnels under the Giza Plateau that need more investigation. The abstract summary of their finding looks really interesting, really exciting, and everybody is scrambling to find out more information. I traced the source of the abstract from the conference to the Facebook page of a man called Trevor Grassi. He also has a YouTube channel. I got in contact with Trevor and he was more than happy to help fill me in on the information that he knows so far and just to help clarify what's going on and what we can expect in the coming weeks.
This has been a pretty crazy week so far. A lot happened this weekend, and very excited to have a chance to talk with you about it right now, because there's a lot of things that are kind of very confused in the public space right now regarding where these documents came from, the entire copper project.
Yes.
So thanks for having me on here.
No, that's fine. I was the same. I found your Facebook post, which had the abstract from the press release, but I think people are getting a bit confused because they're looking for the press release, which, am I correct? That is the abstract kind of is the press release.
Yeah, it's the abstract describing basically what they're going to cover in the conference that just happened this past weekend in Italy. Mm-hmm. And so this is Corrado Malongo, Filippo Biondi, and Armando May are all doing this project, and they're friends of mine. I've been talking with them since last year about trying to help get this discovery out. They told me last year, get ready, Trevor, because March 15th, the world's going to see. So I've been preparing for this day, but what actually happened on the day was very surprising to me. And it turns out that I ended up being the source for this entire document coming out. So I really appreciate, because
I'm just like, come on, guys, look.
Mm-hmm. They should be. If people are not excited about this, they are blind. I mean, we'll wait for the details, but this is something that the world has never seen before. The world is never going to be the same after this.
It has come out. It actually hasn't come out. The new study that's been announced with these claims. So, okay. So how do we assess this? What are the issues here? Besides the fact that it just sounds preposterous that there are structures larger than the Empire State Building underneath the pyramids of Giza. Okay. Problem number 1. When you do remote sensing, you need to do something called ground truthing. When archaeology has been doing remote sensing for many generations, and what we have found is that when we do things like remote sensing, what that means is you're trying to look at things that are really far away, sometimes that are underground. So it could be stuff like, magnetometry to get magnetic signals from underground. It could be ground penetrating radar. It could be different kinds of wavelengths in satellite imagery that can tell us what's going on. And what you always need to do with it first is you need to actually go and check that your signal actually makes sense with what's on the ground, because there's all kinds of explanations when you're doing remote sensing for the kind of signal that you receive in your data. For these kind of lines, there can be multiple explanations for them. And so one way to kind of ground truth this, I noticed this conversation, for example, on X this morning, is that, well, is the data this team is producing actually showing what we do know at the Giza Plateau? So, for example, Vincent Brown here, who reports on Egyptological Discoveries, was talking with Egyptologist and agent Nigel Hetherington, and they note that why do these people's scans not actually show caves that we know are there? So, if there are caves there, we know they are there, they should show up in these scans if these scans are accurately depicting underground voids and underground structures like those caves. So the initial bit of ground truthing seems to me, I've seen several discussions about this on social media with archaeologists, that the data that's presented is not actually showing what we have real physical knowledge of, caves that we have been in, voids that we know about in the pyramids, and things like that.
Have a bit of a read of this slide. There's some good comments on there.
So the initial bit of ground truthing seems to me, I've seen several discussions about this on social media with archaeologists, that the data that's presented is not actually showing what we have real physical knowledge of, caves that we have been in, voids that we know about in the pyramids, and things like that. And so, as an example of a reference of a project that is doing that, there's the Pyramid Scan Project, which is a collaboration between the Cairo University and the Heritage and Innovation and Preservation Institute in France. They have been doing muon scans of the Great Pyramid for the last decade. They've been publishing the results, and they've been working to try to ground truth them. And so, for example, many Egyptologists have been skeptical of some of the claims by this Pyramid Scan Project, and certainly not all of them have been ground truth. But they have been working over the last decade to take their muon scans and then figure out different ways to ground truth them with other methods, sometimes involving physical investigation, sometimes involving other types of imagery and remote sensing methods to be able to confirm what they see with their muon scans. And so in that sense, this is an example of how remote sensing should be done. You get a signal and you do what you can to check it. This paper, which is ground truthing the small void that the Pyramid Scan Project has found in the Great Pyramid, was just published, 3 days ago. So they are still doing this kind of ground truthing to be able to demonstrate their results in a convincing fashion, because that is how we go about remote sensing. And I have done this myself many times, where we have worked with satellite imagery, where we think we have evidence for ancient architecture, and then we go there and we check it, and sometimes it turns out to be ancient architecture, and sometimes it turns out not to be. So there's an important lesson that archaeologists have learned for decades, that while remote sensing is extremely valuable, we have to ground truth it, because we recognize that it's not perfect. So even more problematic with the study that was just announced last week using this SAR method. Like I said, this SAR method has been used by archaeologists and surveyors back for 40 years, since the 1980s. And the big problem with it is it does not penetrate very deep into desert soils and sands and through rock. It actually, using some of the best machine learning methods, it penetrates as deep as like 3 meters. So with accuracy and precision. So part of the problem is, well, you know, I mean, in this article here, let me see if I can pull it up. I have this article handy. Let's see. I do have this article handy, right? I swear. 2 seconds. Let me get the right thing. Here we go. Even in their introduction, they point out that this has been used since the 1980s. In the early 80s, NASA had started using this, and it was demonstrated that it could receive subsurface information of the Sahara Desert to a depth of a few centimeters to a few meters, to 2 meters. And more recent methods, like I said, from 2023, this is what we're looking at, have repeatedly demonstrated that this method, the SAR method, does not penetrate more than 2 meters through rock, even using up-to-date advanced machine learning and AI methods to be able to inversely, how do they put it? To invert the penetration depth of these SAR signals. So this is a real big smoking gun issue. These are not new methods. These are well-known methods that have limitations in what they can tell us about what is happening underground. And this team has not demonstrated that they have solved those problems, because these are well-known problems that we cannot trust the data beyond a meter or 2 in desert environments or through rock. So yeah. Problem number 1 is a significant problem. The methods do not seem up to the task to demonstrate the claims that have been made. Problem number 2, we actually know quite a lot about Giza. and the pyramids. And we know quite a lot, not just about the pyramids themselves, but we actually know quite a lot about the actual landscape, the topography and the geology and the hydrology of the Giza Plateau. In fact, we know enough of it to call it a fucking plateau, right? We know what this is. So, if we actually understand the geology and the hydrology of the Giza Plateau, it's pretty easy to show that there are problems with claims that there are megastructures underneath the pyramids. The reason why is because, well, the pyramids themselves are sitting on bedrock. They're carved out of bedrock. They're solid rock underneath the pyramids. So how do you build a mega structure into solid rock, if you see what I mean? And this is well studied. We have books and articles on the stones and the geology and the quarrying of stones at Giza. We understand the entire topography of these pyramids, the Sphinx, where the different quarries are for pulling out stones to build these pyramids. And in fact, we actually not only have the quarries themselves, we have the quarries where they were cut out of bedrock. We can physically see that this is solid rock that the pyramids are actually built on, right? And at the same time, we understand the geology of when this rock was formed. This rock was formed in the Eocene. So we're talking millions of years ago. We have the fossils from that period inside the rock, because it's limestone formed by fossils, formed by shellfish and things like that. So we have a clear understanding of this bedrock. We also have a clear understanding of how the stones of the pyramid, because of chemical analyses of the stones, where they map out to where they were carved out of different quarries on the Giza Plateau, and sometimes they were imported, some of the limestone and granite, of course. And so, why is my computer going weird? This is what the geology of the Giza Plateau looks like. It has been extensively and intensively studied through actual excavation, through a wide range of remote sensing methods, from electronic resistance to magnetometry to ground penetrating radar. Scholars have done a wide range of different studies for different reasons in order to understand this. And so these pyramids are built on solid bedrock. There's no major voids underneath them. Furthermore, oh, I got rid of that image. 1 second, let me get an image in here. Let me find it. Come on, I have too many images. Here we go. So we also have, for example, we've excavated and explored these pyramids fairly extensively. We know that people actually carved, the ancient Egyptians carved chambers and passages into this bedrock. So we see that it is carved out of solid bedrock, both for the Great Pyramid and for the Khafre Pyramid. We have passages and chambers carved directly out of the bedrock underneath these pyramids. So where the hell is the voids, the giant voids where Empire State Building sized columns could be? This is sort of something that this team has to deal with, is the huge amount of evidence we have for the geology and even the excavation of parts of this bedrock by the ancient Egyptians. Second of all, we have a good understanding of the hydrology of it. And for example, the water table is just not that low. If, for example, more recent studies have looked at ancient water tables and where there's Nile branches, for example, Shisha et al. In 2022, and have shown how there was a branch of the Nile, the Khufu branch, that extended all the way up to the pyramids. So, you know, the water table was quite high in the period of the ancient Egyptians, and it still is quite high. This is a photo from 1880, right at Giza Plateau, with the Nile flooding up quite next to it. And then this is explorations of the hydrology of the entire Giza Plateau, showing at the depth at which there is natural groundwater. So the groundwater table underneath, and we actually know that there's groundwater not very deep underneath the pyramids. and along the Giza Plateau. We've actually done ERT, not me, but these are teams that are actually managing Giza. They want to understand the water, the water table, so they can understand how, for example, the Sphinx erodes in today's period, because the Sphinx is still eroding, as are many of the monuments there. The last time I was at Giza, it rained. So, you know, understanding how to manage this sensitive terrain is important. And so we have a good understanding of the hydrology and the depth of the water table. And it's not very deep. It's not 2 kilometers down. There's water there. So how are there megastructures built 2 kilometers underneath the water table? These kind of stigmatized claims, you have to immediately put up your blinkers and say, wait a second. Why are they saying they're being shut down? These people have published stuff. They haven't been stopped from publishing things. They've made press releases. They've gone viral. Who is stopping these people from speaking their minds? Nobody is stopping any of these people from speaking their minds. They have a larger platform than I do. How am I shutting them down? I am a minor archaeologist with a small YouTube channel, but I get accused regularly of trying to shut people up. Fuck off. You can say whatever you want. I don't care. But I can tell other people that you're wrong, because I have the right to speak as well. So that's just how this world fucking goes. If you believe in free speech, well, then I can criticize you for being a douchebag who constantly calls out cover-ups. Okay? Because that is a pansy way to prove your argument. Because if you want to prove your argument, use real evidence, motherfucker. Don't claim that you've been canceled when you've not been fucking canceled. Okay? So, who are these people? Who is this team? Jason Colavito, good friend of the channel, good guy. He has a nice blog post about this team and who they actually are. And I suggest everybody read it. They consist of people who believe in ancient aliens, UFO type stuff. That's Malanga for you. Malanga, by the way, is a chemist. He's a well-published chemist. Never done anything on archaeology. We'll see what he has published in a second. Biondi is no longer an academic. He runs some firm to use this SAR type stuff to look at the Khafra pyramid. And then it's a range of other people. It was publicized, of course, by people well known in the conspiracy community. And so that's part of the point. This took off with this video, not by the guy on screen, but this one right here.
Corrado Malanga from the University of Pisa and Filippo Biondi, involved in radar and remote sensing research with the University of Strathclyde, published peer-reviewed research in 2012 of tomographic SAR images obtained from different angles, enabled the 3D reconstruction of inside the pyramid of Khafre and deep beneath the surface of the plateau. Near the base of the pyramid, 5 identical structures are seen, connected by geometric pathways. Inside each of these are 5 horizontal levels and a sloping roof and Menkure, and that they were built around 2500 BC.
Sorry, this is just the cheesiest fucking music I've ever heard in my life. And so that guy who published that video, he also made a blog post that went extremely viral. He was a correspondent for InfoWars, the famous Alex Jones InfoWars, for up until a few months ago, I think. And so he's the one who popularized it. And then the second guy, Jay Anderson, I think his name is, he has this website or YouTube channel called Project Unity. And he created this
to express
video.
in words just how significant of a discovery this is. Filippo Biondi and Corrado. The tomographic data suggests that these are vertical wells with intricate spiral pathways. Now, this design not only implies a functional purpose, but also a level of sophisticated engineering that completely blows the dynastic Egyptian model out of the water. A lost hall of records, a sacred hall of knowledge below the Giza Plateau, the halls of Amenti. Could this be the lost hall of records from the pre-flood era? Now, obviously, this discovery is extremely controversial.
Just asking questions, just asking questions. Yeah, of course. It could be, couldn't it? And so we're just asking questions. Could this data, which is using a method that nobody uses and contradicts all the other evidence we have for the geology of the region and the hydrology, could it be what we think of from the Emerald Tablets of Thoth? That's essentially their argument. Yes. So I'm going to say that the reality is this has barely been reported in the media. It's not been published in any academic sort of context. And it's only been promoted by Alex Jones, Joe Rogan, Glenn Beck, and a host of other people who believe just about the last thing that they heard. So, you know, this is the kind of thing that we're looking at. Is the reason this is so popular is because of alternative media influencers. So these people here who have pushed this out so that it gets a lot of attention. And it has, for example, made it into the Daily Express. I guess I don't have the damn headline here. I did at some point, but I guess I covered it up. And the reality is it's just what people want to hear. Look, everybody, this meme right here, there is a subterranean city under the pyramids of Giza. We cannot explore it because Egypt's corrupt government refuses to allow science to learn the truth, was made 3 years ago. This is not news because this idea has been around conspiracy theorists and pseudo-archaeological circles for decades. For fucking decades. Graham Hancock started accusing the Egyptian government of covering up his attempts to do research there before he even published Fingerprints of the Gods in America. I'm sorry, but this is just a claim. It's stigmatized knowledge saying I am being canceled in order to get you to pay attention to me. Cancel culture at its finest. When you're canceled, you get book deals. So the last problem with this is that it's just a fucking Rorschach test. Okay? So for anybody who's not familiar, the Rorschach test is that ink blot thing. It's supposed to understand your psychology. You get an indeterminate ink blob. You describe what it looks like, and that tells something about you more than it says about what that ink blot is, right? And so this is what pseudo-archaeology in today's world frequently relies upon. These kind of images. This is the actual data, right? Do you see for sure any human-made structures here? If these were all pillars of consistent materials that they were built out of, would they not show the same signal going all the way up for all of them if they were man-made in a consistent way? No, what they have is data, which as we've seen is not trustworthy data for this method below a depth of 2 meters. And then they have data and they say, if I squinted it and then I create some beautiful artistic interpretation of it, and then I create a video with some fancy music and la-da-da-da-da, I can go viral in today's world where this is what everybody's been waiting for. They're interested in going viral to get money to keep doing their stuff. That is what they want to do. This is what people with very minimal data would like to do. No, I have a spam dude on Twitch. Okay, he is gone. And so, yeah, so what you see here on the right, this is just an artistic interpretation of the actual data, which is no better than a friggin' Rorschach test. That is what this really is. It kind of looks like something, so they say, it's what we want it to be. Something so cool that everybody's going to watch my fucking YouTube video and maybe chip me a few bucks, because that is what people are into. So yeah, and this is something that we see all over pseudo-archaeology. We have discussed this. I have another video on my channel discussing this sort of remote sensing data and different interpretations with it at the site of Gunung Padang in Indonesia. And even Joe Rogan agreed looking at this kind of stuff is like a Rorschach test. He agreed with me when I brought that up to him in person. Now that I'm no longer the last person that he's listened to, on the other hand, he is believing all kinds of other kinds of things. And now other people then take it and they create these kind of memes where they show these kind of pillars and look, they're taller than the Empire State Building. Lost civilization, buddy. This is advanced stuff. They somehow built rock into bedrock for no reason because they put a big pillar inside bedrock. Think it through. Why would you need 8 pillars made of rock in bedrock? Solid bedrock. So, yeah, this is absolute bullshit. There is not any sort of evidence behind this. There is evidence, very strong evidence against it. If we understand the geology, the hydrology, and the archaeology of Giza, there's simply no room for this shit. And other than the Daily Express and a few random sports blogs, I don't think this has been reported anywhere. It's not been published. It has not been, nothing's been done with it. It's just a fucking press conference and some YouTube videos. So, conclusion, my beer tastes good.
There you go. What do you reckon? Please let me know in the comments below. And also remember to like, share and subscribe to help us out. Cheers and catch you later.